People that are daring, that are exciting, that are different. That's the stuff that I really enjoy. I've worked with the police a number of different times. The Canadian Army, the U.S. Marines. I've worked as a recreation coordinator for Yukon Brotherhood. Some people think that I live a schizophrenic lifestyle. I'm the chief flying instructor for Action Aviation, so I go out and I fly. Then I go and I do artwork. I grew up in the Yukon in northern BC in Atlin. My parents went and mined during the summer and had a trap line during the winter. So I spent a lot of time in boarding homes, and maybe that's what made me quite independent, because just about every winter I was staying with a different family. I used to play a lot of war and soldiers, and had a lot of G.I. Joes and stuff, and used to march around and guard the outhouse and do things like that. So I always was quite interested in history, especially the history of World War II and of the military. And so when I became 17, I was old enough to go off to the Army. I went. And I belonged to a mechanized infantry company, so we had we drove around a lot in armored personnel carriers, the M113 armored personnel carrier. I got sent off to CFB Edmonton for jump training, parachute training, and after I was jump qualified, I volunteered for the Canadian Airborne Regiment. Well, I spent 3 years in the Canadian Army. I got my honorable discharge, and I enjoyed it. But after I was out for a while, I worked as a jail guard for the RCMP in Frobisher Bay and in Whitehorse, and I also got my private and commercial license. I decided I want to go do something adventurous again. My choices off the top of my head were the Green Berets, the British Royal Marine Commandos, the New Zealand Paratroopers, and the U.S. Marines. The Canadian Army, I feel, professional-wise, training-wise, morale-wise, discipline-wise, is much superior to the U.S. Marines. The U.S. Marines have an excellent public image department, which makes people think the U.S. Marines are really tough. I really didn't enjoy the U.S. Marines as a military unit, but I did enjoy the travel because they sent me all over the place. I've traveled, well, I've been to well over 30 countries, I guess, in the world. Traveled around the world. I've been to Europe 3 different times, Asia about 3 different times. And it gives me a broader picture of the world, of the conditions in the Yukon. It wasn't until I left the Yukon that I realized that there was actually problems up here that were abnormal. The high death rate, the high crime rate, the high suicide rate. These are all abnormal situations. If you grow up here, you don't realize they're abnormal. But when you've gone to some countries where people are so poor that they sleep on the street and they beg for a living, and they have to actually take their craps on the street, and they've never washed probably in their life, you think, damn, things are pretty damn good here in the Yukon, in Canada. In the Canadian Army, one thing that happened that was rather interesting, I had a couple NCOs come and go, geez, you're doing really good for an Indian. And I thought, I'm doing really good, but, you know, do Indians have a problem? I guess generally what happened is it was very hard for Native people in the military, but often if they stuck to it, they often ended up in being very good soldiers. In the U.S. Marines, it was quite different because the U.S. military, they make provisions for females and for blacks, and what happens that you get more recognition as a black. If you're a black female, then you have it made. I guess something like what they say up here in Whitehorse, if you're a Native female, you have more opportunity. Well, it was the same thing down there. So as a result, Natives in the U.S. Marines had no no recognition at all, and there was a few natives in, but it was Hispanics, blacks, and females that got that. But that was fine. It just meant that I got promoted slower. That's all. I guess around 1974, I went and started to try to develop my native art style. I'm basically self-taught, I guess, as an artist, and in 1975 I sold my first pieces, and so I guess that gave me a bit of confidence as an artist. After a while I got bored of the coastal style. I felt it was very repetitive. It was always the same things over and over, a raven, or a wolf or a killer whale, and I thought, well, I can do more with this sort of stuff. You have a series of motifs, a series of shapes. The first time I brought the works around to the galleries here in Whitehorse, they looked at it and they went, wow, this is fascinating. We've never seen nothing like this. We don't want it. So my start in art in the Yukon was very slow. After I had come back from Europe the second time, and I had gone over there totally for artistic reasons, I was influenced a lot by the abstract and the expressive work over there. As a result of that, I started, instead of having very fine defined lines, I started to splatter the paint on, sort of like what Pollock would do. And Jackson Pollock, I would go splat, splat, splat. And when I've had that painting, those paintings on display at galleries, I've wanted to go and splatter the paint onto the walls. Unfortunately, galleries don't take to that too kindly.
I especially want to hang the ones of the contemporary designs that you've used the old traditional rules but in a modern way. So what I liked is something that I know about native art is where you use these ovoids with joints, and then I've quite often seen this type of figure used representing feathers.
The native modernism, what I call it, is incorporating both cultures. I don't really like the idea of something that's totally traditional. I'm not putting people who do traditional work down. It's just that we're living in a modern world, and the artwork is the same way. People who go and have artwork, who do so-called traditional pieces, they do them, you know, for the purpose of selling. And if it's supposed to be something that's sacred, then they whip off hundreds or thousands of them.
This one's even more contemporary, the wolf howling at the moon.
Again, that was a bit of influence from Picasso. And I take a lot of influences. I get influences. When I go traveling and I come back, I have a whole lot of influences from different places. And that's quite a bit different than the traditional Tutchone style, which I'm working on. It's a lost art style from the Yukon, and one of the things that really irritates me is when they talk about traditional native artwork, and there is no traditional native artwork in the Yukon. Yeah. What happened is that since the Tutshones lived a nomadic lifestyle, they would go to the rivers and fish camps in the summertime and go hunting in the wintertime. They moved. Anything they had was pretty well, had to be light and transportable, was also easy perishable. And they found themselves in the 20th century with no examples of their artwork.
Right there?
And the coastal style is so strong, it's really infiltrated up here to a point where almost all Yukon native artists that are non-coastal background are doing coastal style artwork. And it's a pity.
Yes, may I help you?
I'm here for the art class.
Okay.
Well, could I get in?
Yes, you can. Just go up there and I'll push the button.
Thanks a lot. And that's one of the reasons why I teach at the schools when I can. I teach at the jail. I teach whenever I can on Tutchone art. Yeah. Now, this Tutchone art basically is at the Baskin art. and there's only a few things that make it different than other Athabascan art styles. It's like Tutchone being a dialect of Athabascan. The artwork is the same way. The split colors and stuff, which we'll talk about again later on, are some of those examples of something being uniquely Tutchone.
You know, putting the beads in there, it's been sewed with beads.
Yeah.
It looks more of a, you know, smoothed out at the edges there.
For instance, in Ronnie's work here, you can see the leaf-shaped design there. It's basically this shape. I take photographs sometimes to do paintings from. That's the whole reason. I take photographs because I'm trying to get an artistic photograph. And it may not only be figure, it might be just dealing with shape and composition and color. Okay, can you move your hands higher? Just hold that for something nice. Especially in Canada, they see nudity as being very sexual and very taboo, where in Europe it's a whole different ball game. Like in this picture here, I'm trying to get the line of her body on a plain background, but in the background also there's a photograph that a previous photographer took pictures of her, and I like that connection. Look, look. Sometimes I try to get something that looks a little bit classical, a very typical reclining nude. Well, certainly down south, no, I didn't have a problem because I was fairly recognized as an artist. Up in Whitehorse here, it's probably a bit more difficult. It's interesting because my two chosen careers are very difficult careers. Being an artist is by no means an easy occupation, and same to be a pilot, it's extremely difficult to get a job as a pilot because you're forcing the airplane to want to go to the right, or else in the slip situation, that's basically what same sort of scenario, you have to increase the bank in order to make up for that. Does that make sense to everybody? I enjoy teaching, I guess, just because a lot of my jobs I've had have always been in some sort of advisory or teaching position. Even when I was in the U.S. Marines, I was the training NCO for the company. If you lose one magneto, your engine will continue to run without a problem. You might have a loss of about 75 RPM. It's an enjoyment, I guess. So, fortunately, when I paint, it's not work, and when I go and fly, it's not work. I get paid for doing things that I enjoy.
We're all trimmed up, and also we want to hold the altitude. Okay, so whenever you're ready there, what I'd like you to do is just roll right into a 60 degree. As you roll in, add a couple inches of manifold pressure, hold the altitude, all the way back around, and we're back on this heading. Roll out of it, and then you can reduce the manifold pressure. We'll do the first turn to the left here. Okay.
A lot of people don't realize how visual flying is.
All the way to 60 degrees.
I can see a lot of similarities about being an artist and being a pilot, and
All the way around.
you have to really look. You have to have a sense of depth, a sense of movement, and it's a skill. It's a very professional skill.
Okay, good job.
Hi, Don.
Neil.
How's it going?
Good.
Good. I went and I brought this little poster. Well, when I got up here, Nakai players asked me to do the poster for their 60 blow play. So I said, sure. So I started working on that. And I thought, well, it'd be interesting maybe to audition for a part. So I went and I decided to audition for a part, and I got the part of Johnny. He's the ghost.
I guess he finally realized that there was more. Yeah, there's more to life. I guess he finally saw that. I think he's still a bit defiant and defensive about the suicide attempt.
Oh, variety, change, excitement. I think there's a great big world out there with a lot to learn. I guess that's why I travel a lot and do a lot of different things. It seems to be the more experience you have, it makes you a bit wiser too, I think.